G'day and welcome back to the channel, Ginger Ninja's Movie Reviews. I am the Ginger Ninja and these are my Franchise Friday movie reviews. If you're new to my channel, thank you very much for tuning in, stopping by and checking it out. We are looking at the Insidious franchise and we're up to Insidious Chapter 2, which came out in 2013. It was directed by James Wan and it stars Patrickwilson, Rosebyrne, tysimpkins, Barbarahershey, Angus Sampson, leighwhannell, and linsaye. Getting right into this one because I've got a lot to unpack on this one, so let's get into it. The plot. Okay, so the Lamberts believe they have defeated the spirits and that have been haunting their family, but they soon discover the evil is not so easily beaten. Yeah, so look, after the chilling success of 2010's Insidious, James Wan returned in 2013 with Insidious Chapter 2, a sequel that picks up directly where the first one left off and dives even deeper into the further. But does it live up to the original? Well, this film does a lot of things. It deepens the lore and it does answer some lingering questions, and it also cleverly expands on the mythology of the established law. Well, I don't want to say law, but what was established in the first film. And it works as an unsettling continuation that blends ghost story thrills, but also time travel weird stuff and psychological horror. So let's take a breath and explore the deepening mysteries of the further with Insidious Chapter 2. So looking straight at the cast, and we've got the returning cast led by Patrickwilson and Rosebyrne, and they reprise their roles very convincingly. You know, Wilson is given significantly more to do this time around, and he runs with it. His performance is a masterclass in duality. What I mean by that, he convincingly oscillates between a loving husband and something far darker. There's a palpable unease in how he speaks, how he moves, and even how he smiles, especially when the cracks begin to show. It's subtle and it's creepy, and it works well within the story that's unfolding. You know, Rosebyrne is given, again, the emotional anchor of the film, and her reactions feel genuine and raw, especially in scenes where she begins to suspect that something is terribly wrong with her husband. Her grounded performance makes the chaos around her feel more immediate and terrifying. Linsaye returns as Elise, although technically dead. She's still very much present in this film, and her expanded role in The Further gives the film a spiritual backbone. Shay brings a lot of warmth and courage and also a ghostly charm to the franchise that owes much of its staying power to her. The supporting performance by tysimpkins, returning as Dalton, Barbarahershey again as Josh's mother, and of course leighwhannell and Angus Sampson as Specs and Tucker, they help round out the cast that remains committed, even when the story grows increasingly convoluted. Now moving on to the directing and the writing, and we have James Wan and leighwhannell returning on directing and script writing. Now, this is where James Wan proves it again why he is one of modern horror's best directors. His command of tension and atmosphere is as sharp as ever, and given that this film is only 3 years after, that's not surprising. He leans heavily into his love of haunted house setups, and it echoes early horror cinema in use of creeping shots, sudden audio cues, again with that violin, that screeching violin, and dimly lit areas that seem to just stretch into infinity. What is most impressive to me, though, is his orchestration of tone. He balances moments of dread with moments of almost theatrical camp. That sounds a lot worse than it actually is. I don't mean camp as in campy. It's very hard to describe, but it works. He's not afraid to go big, and Chapter 2 embraces its pulpy pulpy is probably the better word for it, not campy, pulpy horror roots. And he does so with confidence, even when it just teeters on that edge of absurdity. Leighwhannell's script is probably the most ambitious element of Insidious Chapter 2. It expands on the events of the first film by revisiting key moments and reframing them with a new supernatural context. And that's got this clever use of time loops within the further. And that's what I meant by that time travel logic that they use. It's where characters are able to essentially go back in time and influence past events. And it is both of us a bit of a strength and a narrative weakness, because it does allow them to do things in the future that reference back to earlier films. And that has immense ability to move the story forward. But it does come at that huge risk of, going over the same old ground again and again. Now, the central mystery surrounding the bride in black and Parkercrane, that adds a twisted psychological horror to the haunting. This goes back to Josh's early childhood, and that's with the time travel stuff. It's really well done. And there is something very disturbing about a serial killer who's raised by an abusive mother, and that trauma then reverberates into the afterlife. It actually pushes the movie from jump scare territory into more emotionally resonant terror-filled film. However, some of the dialogue in this film can be rather clunky at times, with characters that are over-explaining things for the audience's benefit. But because of that exposition heaviness to it, especially in that second act, it does slow the pacing down. But I will say, Leighwhannell's passion for storytelling, it's undeniable throughout the scripts. And he weaves an impressively interconnected tale throughout, because this is a direct follow-up to that first film. It flows perfectly. Moving on to the effects. And look, the film uses practical effects and minimal CGI to great effect. It enhances the haunted house aesthetic without overwhelming the viewer. The set design and the lighting, they play a major role in crafting this otherworldly feel. The makeup and costuming for Parkercrane and his mother are very memorable, and there is something extremely grotesque and unsettling about their presence that kind of sticks with you long after the credits roll. And unlike many modern horror films, Insidious continues to scare through suggestion rather than out and out gore. Now, if you're a gorehound, that may not be for you. But if you like a well-crafted and well-used tale of horror in the scare elements, this is perfect. However, I will say that there are certain ghost effects and sound cues that feel recycled from the first installment, and that can reduce their overall impact. It's going over the same ground over and over again, essentially. It doesn't maintain that same level of terror, but it still looks pretty damn good. Rewatchability. As a direct sequel, following the events of the first film immediately, this works well. And it definitely lends itself to being rewatchable. However, on its own, it simply doesn't work, because you need the entire backstory of Chapter 1, obviously, to really have that connection to the characters and know their story. So will I rewatch this one? Yes. But only directly after Chapter 1. Not on its own. Final verdict. As I mentioned, Insidious 2 is not a standalone film. It is very much a continuation, almost like the second half of a two-part novel, hence Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. It answers many of the questions from the first film while also raising a lot of new ones, and builds on a larger mythology that would hopefully be explored in later sequels, which we'll get to. Now, while it's not perfect, it's bold, it's atmospheric, and it is surprisingly emotional. Leighwhannell elevate the material through confident direction and willingness to push boundaries. It's a film that dares to complicate its own universe and reward fans for paying close attention. In a genre that's often saturated with cheap scares, shallow scripts, poorly developed characters, Insidious Chapter 2 stands as an ambitious and often chilling sequel that doesn't settle for just more of the same. It digs deeper, it reaches further, and it leaves the door open, wide open, for more darkness to come. Overall, for a score, Insidious Chapter 2 gets a 7 out of 10. There you have it. That is my review of Insidious Chapter 2. Have you seen this one? If you have, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below, because I am keen to hear your thoughts on these ones. Like I said, going through the entire Insidious franchise, and we'll be looking at Insidious Chapter 3 next week, so make sure you stick around for that. But, hey, before you go, don't forget to hit this like button, and, of course, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and have a great day.